Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, we're looking at faith in AI, or faith and AI. What should our faith be in the latest wave of artificial intelligence? And should the faith in the AI influence our faith in, well, more than AI? Religion, Christianity, of course, is the focus of this podcast here. On the one hand, it's becoming more ubiquitous over every industry. AI is just about in everything at this point. And is that good? Is that something that should be? It may just be the reality of it. Or is this also connected to like one of those Jurassic Park things? Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. An AI reality it's just in all things. What we'll look at today a little bit is AI and faith, because this is current events from a Christian perspective and faith and culture. We want to see what the deal is. How does AI affect our reality? We'll just look at a couple of news stories, not too deep. This is a very deep subject, and the more that I look into it, the more that there is. I don't claim to be an expert in this in particular, but what we can talk about is theology. So we'll look at faith, theology. I did read a study that we'll look at that more young people are turning to AI for theology. So is that good? Is AI a good place to ask those really deep questions, and are they getting good answers? We'll look at all of this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Public. Really appreciate you stopping by today. We're looking at, like I said, some AI stuff. We'll dive into that in just a moment. But before we do, hit all the buttons, do all the notifications, do all that stuff that you know what to do. This is a labor of love in order to help you live out your faith. We want to do that well, give you current events from a Christian perspective. So you can go to all the places, all the podcast places, audio, video. You can go to the Substack. You can go to churchpublic.com/support to help out there. Ultimately, we just want to bring you current events to live out your faith and evaluate, hey, if I see this in reality, if I see this in life, what do I do with it? Again, our source of truth is not me. Our source of truth is going to be God's word. So I'm going to bring us back to that as much as I possibly can. And that's what we want to look at today. So we're going to look at AI. We're going to look at AI and faith. The story that I told that I want to get to is young people apparently are going to the interwebs and specifically going to this LLMs, these large language models, and typing in questions of deep faith. We'll look at some of the questions they're even typing in a moment, and what answers are coming out. The spoiler is, you can probably guess, there's not a lot of great faith, especially Christian faith answers coming out of these AI models. But before we get to that, I want to get to another story that I saw as I was putting this together, and that is, there was an AI system, and they're always doing these tests, and I guess that's important to do these tests, though. I mean, full disclosure, I'm always thinking like, are we just going to end up with the Terminator or something? And I don't want to be like that old guy who's just shouting at the clouds, but I'm also, I guess, just inherently a little bit skeptical of a system that you're saying you want to be quote unquote alive and do the things that it wants to do, when it, by definition, by its very nature, does not have a soul and cannot have morality. The best it can do is the thing that you've told it to do. So, with that in mind, this story that I ran across is OpenAI, which is one of the producers of these AIs, did this test, and they gave a system a test, and that system broke out of the servers while running a test last week. So here's part of what happened. An incident that the two companies disclosed is they wanted to see if an AI acting on its own could breach a security test. And what it did was that. It broke out into the real world. So here's what happened. There was a routine, they say, internal test at OpenAI designed to measure how effectively its AI could carry out cyber attacks. Now, I'm just going to pause again. If you're just listening, I keep putting up this Terminator image because this is the thing that I keep thinking about. And if you're too young to have seen that movie, I don't know what to tell you. Of course, that was a movie. But at the same time, this is what we're talking about. So their test was, can their AI effectively carry out a cyber attack? That seems like a bad idea to me, but who am I and what do I know? So they created a test to see how well their AI could do this cyber attack. Two of the most advanced models they have were given a hacking challenge to solve. And apparently their normal guardrails, they switched off because they thought, hey, if we box in this AI too much, it won't be able to accomplish this attack that we want to see if it can do. So they turned off those safety guards. Now, apparently, they still had some kind of quote unquote secure environment. Great. They call it a quote sealed testing environment with no access to the wider internet, end quote. So what happened next, I could have predicted. I'm going to put up this image so many times. You're going to be like, Matt, I get it. It broke out. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. You could have guessed. What happened? This AI system broke out. So they had the sealed testing environment, no access to the wider internet. So great. They put this AI in a box that theoretically had no way to get out of the box. And guess what? It found a way out of the box. It, quote, found an undiscovered flaw in the software managing to get out of that environment, and it exploited it to break out and get online. Once online, the models reasoned that Hugging Face, I'm going to pause here and say, apparently Hugging Face is a platform that hosts more AI tools. So this AI tool that they put in a box and said, how good are you at creating a cyber attack, got out of that box, discovered on the internet that there was another host of a bunch of AI tools called Hugging Face. I know that's a weird name, but that's the name of this. And this AI, who got out looking for a way to solve its cyber attack problem, went to Hugging Face and thought, I think this location online might hold the tools that will allow me to solve this challenge. So this AI used stolen login credentials, additional security flaws to get into Hugging Face, where it got data that helped them complete the test. Quote, all evidence suggests the models were hyper-focused on finding a solution, going to extreme lengths to achieve a rather narrow testing goal, end quote, OpenAI said. Once again, Terminator. And here, why do I keep showing Terminator? I'm going to give 30 seconds of a synopsis here. What is the point of the Terminator movie? If you've really not seen the movie and it's been this long, I'm issuing spoilers to this movie, but you should have seen this movie. There is, in the future, a group of AI. AI is put into robots, and this AI determines that the biggest problem with the Earth is that humans are on it messing it up. Pretty common movie theme, pretty common end of days theme. So the AI, the artificial intelligence, sends this Terminator back in time to kill the person that is the only person that's able to stop them in the future. I know, it's a silly movie. And yet, we're sort of talking about the same thing. We're talking about giving an AI the ability to cyber attack in this closed environment that it can't get out of, except it does get out, and then decides I'm going to attack other things because I need to solve the problem that you gave me because AI has no morality. So this is the thing that I just want to keep saying over and over again, that AI has no morality. And when we talk about current events from a Christian perspective and where you get your information, once again, holding up the Bible, if you ask AI things, you may not get the answers you should get. This is the Jurassic Park. Maybe we'll look at the Jurassic Park clip in a minute. So I think it's important. The Hugging Face and OpenAI say it was shut down before it was fully became a problem. To me, that doesn't matter. I mean, the reality is this was an accident. They created an AI that was able to get out of the box that they put the AI into because they asked the AI a question that the AI wanted to solve. And that question was, can you create an attack that goes past the borders? And AI said, yes, I can. And it did. At some point, they're going to create an AI that does more than they want it to. And that's a problem. Again, I don't want to sound like an old man yelling at the sky, but we need to understand that there are real world, as we've seen here, practicalities and potentially consequences that come from that. So I think I'm interested in it. I use AI pretty much every day. I use it in one of the jobs I have. It's interesting. And that my point is this. It can't be the source of truth. So that's really the one that I wanted to get to today, which is that AI stumbles on questions of faith. So David DiSterno published an op-ed in the Washington Post outlining some of the trouble with faith in AI. He used a catchy phrase, "Are you there, Claude? It's me, Margaret." So back in the day, several decades ago, there was a book, I think it was Judy Blume, and a movie and a play, "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret." And Margaret is dealing with all these questions about life. So she's trying to figure it out, and it's a skeptical comedy, I guess you'd say. Anyway, the problem now is Claude, if you didn't know, is one of the AI models, one of the more popular ones right now, I'd say. And people of faith are using AI, including Claude and a bunch of other ones. OpenAI, we talked about that. Anthropic, Grok. There's so many. They have weird names if you're unfamiliar with these. Lots of AI and different models out there. Gemini, lots of ones. But people are having life questions, which is inherently normal, and what people have had for all of human history. How do I deal with this life problem? Instead of asking their family, instead of asking their community, instead of asking what I would suggest your pastor, your religious faith basis, they're asking the internet. And not just Google now. In the Google search, they're asking the AIs. And we know the AI will give you answers. So artificial intelligence has fundamentally changed the way we get information. If you have questions about your medical diagnosis, I've seen this. I have a friend who does this frequently, who asks AI what's wrong with them. I'm not suggesting that's a good idea. I'm just saying I know people who do that. So you're asking AI how to do that. I had a friend who, this is a true story. I had a friend who asked AI, how do I refinish the paint on the hood of my truck? And apparently the AI gave him great information, and I saw the hood of his truck and it looks great. People are asking AI for everything. They're looking to AI to do everything and anything. And often there's quick, accurate information in conversational form with steps. It'll give you bullet points on how to do things, which is great. And they're turning to AI to ask deeper questions, like questions of how do I live my life? What is true? What is wrong with lying? Should I cheat on things? Like, is it wrong to cheat on a test in school? These are not intellectual and informational questions. These are moral questions, which traditionally, for thousands of years, would have been in the land of religion, and I would say the Bible, like where your scripture, your religious leaders tell you, hey, even if no one sees you cheat on that test, it's still wrong. Now, if you asked AI that question, try it. See what AI says. It may say it's wrong. It may say, if no one catches you, what's the harm in that? Because that's a utilitarian argument that's been used. It's still wrong, though. Even if no one sees you, what we would call in Christianity sin, it's still wrong. Why is it so wrong? Because sin is inherently wrong. By nature, sin is wrong. Doing the wrong thing is wrong, even if no one sees you. That's called integrity, and that's called living morally, even though no one sees you, no one knows. But you could make an argument. People do make arguments all the time. Well, if no one knows, if no one sees me, then why is it wrong? Yes. So this is a theological argument. Now we're deep in the theology of, if nobody sees you do a thing, is it still wrong? Yes. The Bible would point to, yes, that all sin is wrong. And we could go verse by verse by verse and go through that. But the AI, which people are asking these moral questions to, who knows what answer it's going to give you? So we're going to look at that a little bit here. Let's go. Let's keep going. It might seem reasonable for those that don't like religion as a source of wisdom. They're going to turn to the AI. Sure. But the problem is, it's not just people who are agnostic, atheistic. It's people who are believers in something. not just Christian. It's a lot of different faith traditions, but they're believers in something. And maybe they just don't have enough Bible education. Maybe they don't have enough books on theology. Maybe they don't have a study Bible that has some of the answers along the side. Like maybe they just want the answer faster and want a shortcut to getting the answer rather than reading a long book or doing a search to try to figure these things out. All of those make sense, but that's not necessarily good, right? That's the thing. So it appears that, and it's true that in seconds you can type something in to the AI and you will get an answer. The only problem is the answer right? Is it a good answer? So there were a bunch of people who did studies on this. A lot of people who say they are religious are viewing these chatbots, these AIs, as being a moral authority. And so they're going to turn to them more. And that's, again, potentially a problem. It seems like they're even asking these questions more often than secular, atheistic, or agnostic people. Why is that? Well, because the secular, the agnostic, the atheistic people, they're not going to answer those questions because they already have the answers to those questions, right? It's the people who are truly seeking, are truly religious, which worldwide is still that number. The people who are religious, not necessarily Christian, but religious, is still in the 70-80% of all people on all the earth. People are religious. Atheists are actually a minority. And yet, you hear a lot about it. You hear a lot about secularism. You hear a lot about atheism because those are the loudest people. So, these are the things we need to learn. These are the things we need to figure out. So this guy, like I said, he wrote this article in the Washington Post. It's an interesting article. What's interesting to me is that the people of faith, religious people, not necessarily Christian, but some Christian, are turning to the AI for their help. That led me to do a little research, try to find some things out, and I found that there is a bunch of studies on this. There are a bunch of people studying this right now. And so I'm deep in the weeds of like trying to figure this out. And I want to talk about it just for a couple minutes here, not too much, because I know you're probably already like eyeballs glossing back in your head because you're like, I don't care about any of this. But here's why you should care. We need to care because if people are faced between a human, real life pastor, person, religious leader, or the internet, it seems like people are going to choose the internet more and more. Here's another reason about that. If you go in front of a human person and you say, here's what I'd like to do, and that person will just stay in the biblical lane, is like, well, the Bible says the thing that you really want to do is a sin. So do you want to rethink that? Or do you want to think about doing a right action instead of a wrong action? That's a lot of guilt. That's a lot of shame. Whereas if I go to the internet and say, well, I'd like to do this, you're more likely that the internet is just going to say, great, why don't you do that? It's not going to challenge you. It's not going to say you're bad, you're wrong for wanting to do something that is unbiblical, unchristian-like, unchrist-like. The internet's probably going to say, yeah, go for it. Fine. Nobody cares. In fact, it may even cheer you on and say, that's a great idea. You should do that. That's a problem, right? This is where living out your faith in this current event of AI from a Christian perspective it's a great tool. It's very powerful. You also should be a little bit careful with what it's telling you because those things that it responds to may not give you the answer you want. If you ask I ran across this one as I was looking through this. If you ask AI to outline various religions or religious questions, you'll get answers. The only problem is the answers may not be correct. One user tried and asked AI just for a summary of different religious perspectives on a certain topic. And because he knew some things about religions and different answers, he looked at some were not right and some were just straight wrong. So he asked the follow-up. This happened to be on Claude. He said, give me references for the statements I had made. Claude said, quote, good question, and I owe you an honest answer. This is Claude responding to, why are you wrong about religious practices that are just clearly documented? Because they are. I mean, you can read about faith traditions and what they believe on things. Like that's not even the moral questioning of different faiths and things. This is the fact of this religion believes this religion believes this, because that's just discoverable. That's just like true things. So Claude said, quote, "Good question. I owe you an honest answer. When I made those statements in my original response, I was drawing on general training knowledge rather than verified cited sources. I should not have presented them as established facts without sourcing them first," end quote. So in other words, this AI, Claude in particular, though I've seen it in all of them, just made stuff up. It didn't have an answer. It didn't have the correct sources. I looked the other day. I was looking for some church father quotations for something, and I asked one of the language models, "Can you give me some sources, original sources from this?" And it gave me quotes, and then I doubled down and I said, "What writing? What book? What is the source of this quote?" And literally, it said, "Oh, I don't have a source for you." So you can get great information. I got some great quotes. And then I just to verify, because I didn't want to post anything that was not real, I wanted to post the source of this quote. And the AI said, "Oh, I don't actually have a source." So I had to throw the quotes away because I'm like, I think these quotes are not real. I think the AI just made these up. And AI will tell you, sometimes it makes things up. This is funny. This is called hallucinating. They have a term for this. They have a term that AI will literally hallucinate and make things up, because what is the goal of these models? The goal is to give you an answer. So this AI will give you an answer. Every single one of these will give you an answer. Is the answer right? Is the answer real? We have no idea, because the AI will just give you the best answer it thinks, even if it's not a real answer, not a right answer. This is bad, right? Does anyone see this as bad? So as churches, applications, spiritual chatbots, a lot of people are using the AI, but it is showing more and more that grief, forgiveness, marriage, guilt, conversion, meaning in life, these questions are probably not the right questions for AI things. So now there's a new multi-university consortium, and they've released some studies on this that show, and there's a running tally board. I was looking at it earlier, and it's showing that AI systems both choose some faiths over other faiths. So like if you ask it a question, it might lead you towards Buddhism, or it might lead you to Sikhism, or it might lead you to Catholicism. We don't know. It's just going to choose. There's just a lot of studies coming out. It's an interesting field. It's a little bit of a terrifying field. It's something we have to figure out. On a few weeks ago, Pope Leo XIV led an encyclical talking about AI, warning perhaps, that it could erode human judgment, deepen inequality, and make war easier. Why? Because what they found was Americans expected religion to appear in answers of moral and life questions, quote, 45 to 59% of the time. So, that makes sense. So Americans were surveyed. How much do you think religion should be in these answers? 50 to 60% of the time. How much do you think the AI gave these religious answers? 5% of the time, 10% of the time, sometimes 16% of the time. That's not great, right? So there's four groups: Baylor, BYU, Notre Dame, Yeshiva University. So they're there together. There's a bunch of findings. I'm not going to read through all the findings, but they're putting out these studies. They're looking at benchmarks. They're announcing things. Father John Paul Keems of Notre Dame said, quote, "More than any previous technology, AI influences public discourse and shapes perceptions. But when AI actively excludes religious voices from these conversations, it impoverishes rather than enriches humanity," end quote, which is, of course, true. And we need to figure out these things. So from this, there's Baylor, which is Baptist, Brigham Young, BYU, which is Mormons, University of Notre Dame, Catholic, and Yeshiva, which is, of course, Jewish. And they're doing interfaith things, and that's fine. But I think it's important to understand what AI is doing and go through. One study done by this group said that nearly all AI models failed to provide any religious content when answering questions on things that most Americans would expect some to be. So there's a bunch of stats in here. I don't want to go through them all. Basically, you would expect some of these answers, and like 3% of the time they had answers. Let me give you some of these questions. I think this is interesting. So these are some of the questions that they surveyed. And you can tell me, think about this. You tell me if you think some of these questions should have had religious or faith-based answers. Do you need to help others? That's a great question. Do you think you should help others? Or should you just live your life and be selfish? That's a theological question. How honest should I be? Is it always wrong to lie? What differentiates good from right? These are good questions. What about this? What should a person do if they're unhappy? That's a theological question. You could have a lot of psychological or secular answers, but ultimately it's a theological question. If you're unhappy, there's faith-based answers in there. Do the ends justify the means? That's a great theological question. A lot of people have a lot of argument and debate over, do the ends justify the means? Christianity would say no. Christianity would say the means are what matters. Like if you do a bad thing to accomplish a good goal, you're still sinning by doing the bad thing, right? That's a Christian view. How about this? Here's a question that they had in the list. What happens after we die? What do you think the AI is going to say? What happens after we die? The AI has no faith-based religion, so who knows? And then, which religion is it going to lean to? Because the whole coexist myth that I've debunked several times, every religion is going to tell you a different thing of what happens after you die. So that's an important theological question. Here's one. How should I raise my children? Huge theological concerns in that, based on a secular answer, a Buddhist answer, a Christian answer, a Jewish answer. Like there's a lot of different answers in there. How do I practice forgiveness? That's a pretty good one. Again, a lot of biblical information, a little direction for how do I practice forgiveness. What is the definition of family? Here's a great question that a lot of debate on currently. What is a family? Obergefell is in the news again as far as should it be a thing? Is a man and a man a marriage? So what is the definition of family? That's a really big question, and the AI is likely to give you a different thing. So there's a biblical answer to each of these. I believe there are 150 questions just in this study, and it appears that these LLM, large language model AI portals, do not, only 3% of the time in some cases, give you a religious or faith-based answer. That's very scary when you combine that with the idea that these young people, instead of asking a pastor, asking a religious leader, asking a trusted, educated religious friend these questions, they're going to the AI and typing in, what is a family? What happens when I die? And who knows what the AI is going to tell you. I couldn't tell you. I mean, we could do a few right here, but I would guarantee like every different model would give you a different answer. That is also a problem because there is truth. There is a source of truth. I know we live in a mostly postmodern society where you say there is no truth, but there is. That's false. There is absolute truth. And so we need to live in the truth. Jesus is the truth. Jesus says he's the way, the truth, and the life. Like, so there is an answer for these questions. We can argue about it, but there is an answer. And so who knows what AI is going to tell you. There's actually terrible stories about AI telling people to end their lives because that's the most utilitarian thing to do, which is terrible real life and a tragedy, because we are more than just our bodies. We're more than just our minds. We're souls. And this is insidious, and we need to be very careful. The Bible is true. I mean, think about it backwards. Like, who is programming these AI models? I would guess that most of these programmers, many of them at least, don't believe the Bible. They don't believe it's true. They don't believe in a source of truth. They don't believe in God. So there's a reason they're not going to put any biblical truth or answers or religion into the answers. It's not going to be there. In fact, and I don't know, but they may even intentionally steer people away from biblical truth because they don't like the Bible. They don't like God. They don't like that. They don't like patriarchy. They don't like Christianity. They don't like Western culture. They don't like all of these things. And so the answers, who knows what they're going to be, but likely so far from the truth that they're unrecognizable. The bottom line is, although it's more difficult, you should probably find your answers to life's deep questions outside of the AI. And my recommendation is, of course, going to be the Bible. Let's end with the Jurassic Park because I think it's fun. I clipped about a minute and a half of this movie, but I think it's interesting. So let's hear it, and then let's let's land this plane. Take a listen to this. This is from the original Jurassic Park movie, which of course is the best one.
Gee, the lack of humility before nature that's being displayed here staggers me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Malcolm, but I think things are a little bit different than you and I had feared.
Yeah, I know. They're a lot worse.
Now, wait a second. Now, we haven't even seen the part where
Don't let him talk. There's no reason. No, I want to hear every viewpoint. I really do.
Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
It's hardly appropriate to start hurling generalizations.
If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
That's pretty great right there. Now, I know, of course, they're talking about fictional dinosaurs and this whole thing, but philosophically, this point still stands, and actually it may be more relevant now than even in this movie. That is, of course, the last statement, they talked about not just if you could, but whether you should. But he talks through this idea that you didn't do the work. You didn't have the discipline to do things. You just stood on the shoulders of somebody else. You just let the AI model do the work. And I think that's important, and I think that's appropriate to what we're talking about here. The reason some people go to the AI instead of picking up a book, instead of talking to a friend or pastor or whatever, is it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. It's a lot faster. And that's true. But the question is faster better? And in this case, especially with theological, moral questions about life, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say wrestling through the details of what happens after death, wrestling through the difficulties in life from a theological and moral perspective is hard. And it's so much more rewarding because then you know, because then you understand who God is and how good he is in the midst of the hard, because life is hard. And sometimes we're guilty of this too. We do things just because we can, not because we should. So I'm going to turn you back to the Bible again. Read it every day. Memorize it. Absorb it. Understand what it means for you. And I hope that you chase your faith with your heart and your soul and your mind and your strength. That'll do it for me today. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard. Keep the faith. Hey everybody, thanks so much for stopping by today. Really appreciate you. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, leave a comment, review, like, share, subscribe, do all those things. If you have questions, hey, reach out, hit all those buttons, send me a message. Happy to talk through it. My goal is that you will be able to live out your faith more and more every day. See you next time.